Order the regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission, Monday, July 10th, 2023, at 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Mount Pleasant City Commission recognizes the Anishinaabe, whose ancestral lands the city stands upon today. We acknowledge the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe and recognize that the three bands of Ojibwe, Saginaw, Black Creek, Black River, and Swan Creek, have resided on this land for over 200 years. Our acknowledgement of the full history of the tribe and our commitment to be good stewards of these ancestral lands are an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those ancestors who came before us. We give thanks to the generous care with which the Anishinaabe and those members of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan have given and continue to give to this land and our community. Clerk Bauck, can you please take the roll?
Commissioner Asman?
Here.
Commissioner Bush?
Here.
Commissioner Chapman?
Here.
Commissioner Ake is absent. Commissioner Wingard?
Here.
Vice Mayor Alsteiger? Here. Mayor Perschbacher?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, since we have a quorum, we will continue, and we will move on to proclamations and presentations. We have a presentation on air quality by Jennifer Morris from the Central Michigan District Health Department.
Thank you. I won't take up too much time. Aaron had reached out and asked if I just talk a little bit about air quality. I'm sure you all know that we've had some air quality issues over the summer. I don't think it's anything I've ever anticipated, and it's not anything I'm an expert on, but I've had to learn a lot about recently. For those who don't know, I'm the medical director for our health department, and you probably do know our health department's a multi-county district, so we cover 6 counties. And there have been some questions about outdoor activities and what do we need to do with health, with air quality. Currently, things have gotten a lot better, but with the dry weather, the hot air, this will likely come up again, if not this year, in years to come. So just wanted to give you some resources. There are a lot of resources available, overwhelmingly many resources available. If you're ever looking for anything, the best place I think to start is airnow.gov. The introduction here, I just put a very, very brief overview of why we worry about wildfire smoke and air quality, but then just some action steps, things you can recommend to the public. But then as a government agency, if you have buildings or businesses asking for guidance, you can go to the airnow.gov and sign up for alerts, so you'll get warned if there are going to be bad air quality days. I put numerous other locations where you can find forecasts, so you can see what the future might look like if you're trying to reschedule activities. And then discussion about what to do about that, what you need to worry about, and really detailed explanation. What I did in the last 2 pages is I combined a couple of tables and then tried to make it a little more simple to understand of just basically what you need to think about at the different levels of air quality, and then put in a few different links and things like some examples, like they talk about a communication guide, and I put in an example for you if you're interested in that. Obviously, the health department's always available for guidance. Again, we're not air quality experts, but the state actually does have meteorologists on staff that are there to help and have been helping to guide us through this as well. So if there's ever any questions, we can help with that. But again, just hopefully some basic guidance to help out as you're looking forward, and if you want to create any plans or just to have better understanding of what's happening. So I think that's it, unless there's questions or concerns or anything.
Are there any questions?
No questions for myself. I was just talking with Aaron, and I just wanted to say thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I just wanted to extend that, so thank you.
Anytime.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Morris. We appreciate your time.
Yep, no problem. All right.
I would like to know, is there a possibility of us putting this on our website, a link, that would be very beneficial to our residents. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't mind how you use this material. And then on the health department's website, which is just cmdhd.org, they have links to the airnow.gov. And then the state has put together a website with just summaries of different things as well. So whatever you want to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
you.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to additions or deletions to the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or deletions? I will entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. All right, at this time, we have public input on agenda items. If you are part of the public or part of Zoom and would like to speak at this time, you may step to the podiums. You will be given 5 minutes. You will be asked to state your name and your address, and then be given 5 minutes to state what you'd like to talk about on the agenda items. If you're joining us by Zoom, you may use the star 9 feature on your phone if you're joining by phone, or the raised hand feature if you're joining by computer. Is there anyone on Zoom?
There is not.
All right. Oh, I'm trying to listen to something coming out of the walls like before. It's like, oh, you're right there. Okay. All right. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak at this time? All right. This time I will close the public input on agenda items, and we will move to petitions of receipt of petitions and communications. Manager DeSense.
Receipt of petitions and communications includes monthly report on police-related citizen complaints received, minutes of the Downtown Development Authority, April, minutes of the Airport Joint Operations and Management Board, May, and minutes of the Parks and Recreation Commission from May.
Thank you. We are moving on to the consent items. I do have there was a mistake in the minutes that were sent out for the regular meeting of June 26th. The mistake has been corrected, so we now have the correct minutes, but it was where Commissioner Asman was counted voting twice. So we have removed that, and Commissioner Asman is counted just as a nay for it was for the water, phase 2. All right. With that correction, would any of these consent items wish to be taken off and placed in the agenda? All right, Manager DeSense.
Consent items this evening includes approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held June 26, 2023, approval of the minutes of the closed session held June 26, 2023, consider resolution in support of final approval of temporary traffic control order number 4, 2023, consider an extension to the contract with Nutrigrow. Consider an extension to the contract with Nutrigrow Environmental Solutions, Inc. for biosolid services. Consider setting a public hearing for July 24, 2023 for Development District License for Valhalla Indoor Axe Throwing. Consider approval of pass-through MEDC funding for architectural and engineering services for Broadway land management, and authorize the city manager to sign the necessary documentation, and consider approval of payrolls and warrants.
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
I move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. All right. We will move on to new business. Number 13, consider approval of buyout of purchase buyback program vehicles with Crapo Ford. Manager DeSense.
All right, perfect, thank you. I am joined here by our Public Works Director, Jason Moore, as well, too, who would be available for some questions, but I'll go ahead and tee us up for this conversation. The city has a long-standing agreement with Crapo Ford, which it uses to maintain a fleet of vehicles for various city services. The city purchases trucks from Crapo Ford at a discounted government rate each year. We then sell those vehicles back to Crapo Ford at the end of the year, and the new trucks are purchased with the proceeds from the sale. Doing so has allowed the city to maintain a new fleet of vehicles each year and pay little to no cost in annual maintenance for these vehicles. However, the city was informed that Crapo Ford is no longer able to support this program. Staff has considered options to maintain a vehicle fleet in a similar way with the current budget, but we've not found a program like this to be able to do so in the fashion that we've been doing it. We also reviewed pricing for new vehicles through an alternative provider. However, the vehicles that are being offered to us at the rate they're being offered to us at, these would be vehicles that are not as good as the vehicles we currently have. For instance, they don't have all of the amenities such as four-wheel drive, which obviously in Michigan winters is something that comes in very handy for our fleet. In reviewing the pricing, staff determined that the best course of action would be to purchase the current vehicles through a buyout of the program with Crapo Ford. This will maintain the current fleet with high-quality vehicles at the best price. Crapo Ford has agreed to the buyout at a per-vehicle cost that reflects the difference in price between the current fleet value and the new vehicles that we were looking at through an alternative provider. Staff is asking the City Commission to authorize the buyout of 18 vehicles for $79,200.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll move.
Is there support?
Seconded.
Are there any further discussion?
You said 18 vehicles for $79,000?
So the way the program works, just so we're all clear, the city a long time ago in starting this program with Crapo Ford purchased 18 vehicles, let's just call it. I don't know the
Yeah.
exact amount, however many years ago, et cetera, but we purchased a number of vehicles, and then every year the new Ford F-150s and 250s come out, we trade or we sell those vehicles, we purchase the new vehicles, and we pay whatever difference there is if there is one in that. So you have to think the city's already paid roughly, and Director Moore, if you can help me out here, I believe $35,000 on average per vehicle at this point.
yeah.
Now, again, the difference between these vehicles and purchasing the new vehicles is roughly about $3,500 per vehicle. And so Crapo Ford has agreed to a buyout at that rate.
Gotcha.
So the majority of the cost of these vehicles has already been paid for
Yes.
essentially at this point, so it's gone.
It's a little bit like a private lease program.
Correct, yes.
Any other discussion? All right, then I will ask, all those in favor, say yes.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we're moving on to the consider the resolution to authorize the issuance of the Water Resource Recovery System revenue bonds for Phase 2. Manager dissents.
Perfect. I'm also joined again by Public Works Director Moore, as well as Assistant Public Works Director Middleton, and also Finance Director Saladin, who could probably answer some questions should the City Commission have them. But again, I'll go ahead and tee us up for this conversation. So the City Commission declared the intent to issue $18 million in bonds for Phase 2 of the Water Resource Recovery Facility upgrades in March of this year. The City Commission later awarded a contract to RCL Construction, this was at our last City Commission meeting, for $25.8 million to complete Phase 2. The city received $9 million in grant funding through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, CWSRF program, and the plan would be then to bond for the $18 million to complete the project. Staff was able to secure the gap in financing through the CWSRF program, which will save the city an estimated $4 million over 30 years of the term of the loan. This would be compared to what we would get at normal bond rates if we were just to sell the bonds ourselves. The City Commission is asked to approve the attached resolution to authorize the request.
Are there any questions for clarification?
Just curious, issuing the bonds, where, like, who's purchasing the bonds then? Like, that
Yeah, if I can, Director Saladin, as far as the process goes.
So basically, the state of Michigan would be the debt holder in this case.
Gotcha. I just couldn't imagine like enough, like, my neighbors and everything pitching in enough to like buy that many bonds.
Yeah,
So
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I will ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the resolution to authorize the issuance of up to $18 million in clean water state revolving funding to fund phase 2 of the WRRF rehabilitation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there further discussion? All right, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. We're moving on to announcements on city-related issues and new business. This is where the staff and the commission have the ability to bring forward information that they would like the city residents to know, or a request from the staff on things that they'd like to do. Is there any announcements or new business anyone would like to bring forward? Clerk Bauk.
I just want to remind everyone that the petitions are available for nominations for the November election for city commission seats, and the deadline to file is 4 p.m. on Tuesday, July 25th.
The Isabella County Fair will be the livestock and all sorts of other activities for the community. Fair will be here at the end of the month. I was trying to look up the exact dates to be prepared, but
Okay,
it's the end of the month.
all right. Anything else? All right, if we don't have any other announcements or new business, I'm going to move on to public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. If you have come and you wish to speak about something on the agenda or non-agenda, or any non-agenda items, you may step to the podium. You will be asked to state your name and your address. You'll be given 5 minutes. If you're joining us by Zoom, you can use the raised hand feature or *9 to be let into the meeting. You'll be asked to state your name and address, and you'll be given 5 minutes. Yes.
Thank you. Michael Kostreva, 210 Court Street is my business. And I just want you to consider, you've all probably have received emails from me. I hope you've read them. I'm a concerned citizen, and I want you to know that to a lot of people, including myself, the retaining of the connector is an important good thing for Mount Pleasant. And I'm asking you to find a way, as you do your planning for whatever is going to be there, this expansion of the park, whatever, that somehow you retain that connector road, okay? Thank you. Also, you should know that I have, my office right downtown. I've taken a survey in my spare time. I don't have much spare time, but I took a survey of a bunch of people who have lived here for a long time and worked down there. And here's the survey. And I was just talking to Ms. Ponsarl about it. You may be interested in it. You have yet to convince the public, I would say, that where you're headed with this downtown project for $2 million, whether you have the public on your side. Here's 34 names that I was able to get. I'll give that to Mr. DeSense. And as always, I thank you for your time. I was in your seat for many, many years in a different fashion.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom?
No comments and nobody on Zoom.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to come forward? All right, at this time, I am going to close the public comment. And if there is no objection, I'd like to go right into the work session. All right, so we will move into the work session where we're going to talk about the property maintenance standards and International Property Maintenance Code.
All right.
Who's putting that all together?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and tee up staff as they get their presentation pulled together. Presentation is ready to go. They're ahead of me. All right. So we do have our building inspector, Brian Kench, and we also do have our director of public safety, Paul Laurie, as well, too, to go over, in particular, some things about the International Property Maintenance Code. So when we last talked about this, City Commission had indicated an interest in moving forward with the IPMC, but there were some questions about what would the process look like, those kind of things. So staff's here to talk about what a proposed ordinance would look like, what that process would look look like, what changes, what stays the same in terms of property maintenance, and then also what our implementation process would look like as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Building Inspector Kench to get us started.
All righty. Thank you, folks. Well, we're going to start, I know back in, Doug had introduced this back in November of last year, and he had a work session in January. And at that point, I was brought in to kind of help with the identifying some of the codes and so on that may need to be changed, amended, and or deleted as part of our adoption of the property maintenance code. One of the driving forces behind this is to get us a consistent set of standards throughout all building types, whether that be residential, commercial, or industrial. And then also to work with a document that's compatible with our current state of Michigan building codes, both the Michigan Building Code for commercial construction, the residential code for all residential uses, and then the rehab code for existing buildings. All of those documents, or standards rather, are produced by the International Code Council. Both the definition section and our administrative sections in Chapter 1 of all those documents would be consistent over all those standards. So that would be nice. One of the things that we will have now is a clear understanding regarding the authority and duties of our code enforcement personnel. We have that to a certain extent, but there again, consistency throughout all standards and throughout all departments will be useful. And it also provides a clear understanding for rights and privileges for both the homeowners and the building occupants. We're not the first to look at this. There's a number of other college towns. This is just a sampling. Most all your communities throughout the state of Michigan will have some form of a property maintenance standard, like we're looking at here in the basis for consistency under the International Property Maintenance Code. You have Allendale, Elma, Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, and you'll see a number of other communities, college towns that we would state that, that have adopted this property maintenance code. We're looking at the 21 edition at this point. And so what we've been asked is what would change. And so under Chapter 150, we currently have regulations for owner-occupied homes. They fall under the building regulations. So if it's an owner-occupied home and we have a hole in the roof, I'll probably use this example a number of times, but code enforcement officer rolling up to a job site where we have some deteriorating conditions and we have a large hole in the roof, the first thing they shouldn't have to do is determine whether or not it's owner occupied or that it's a rental property. And I think Doug went through that on his last presentation during the work session. But that's exactly what we need to do. So what we're looking at through the adoption of the property maintenance code is updates to our Chapter 150. We'll remove everything related to our property maintenance standards for owner occupied homes and just simply reference the property maintenance code in its 21 edition. We'll do the same thing into Chapter 152, which is our housing and licensing standards. And you'll see that at the tail end of your packet there that we've given you a red line to kind of give you a sampling of all the changes that we're looking at. As I stated earlier, we're looking at amending some of those sections, adding to maybe amending some of those, removing some of those, and then a complete addition in some aspects. So, okay. Chapter 152 is somewhat unique, though I'm going to touch on this real quick. It is our licensing code for the city of Mount Pleasant, so all rental properties that are 6 months or more are required to have a rental license. Short-term rentals in the city now under special use permits are required to have rental licensing. And so the things that we left in Chapter 152 were specific to our rental program, how we administer that, how we do our inspections when licensings are required. But all maintenance items have been removed and will simply be referring to the property maintenance code. Okay. Chapter 96, dangerous structures. That's basically the gist of it right there. It says if you have a dangerous structure, it doesn't give us much to work with. And so we're suggesting removing this and going into our International Property Maintenance Code, where it will define what those conditions are, whether it's faulty wiring, faulty mechanical systems, maybe we have some structural deficiencies, those types of things, and then we can address those. It makes it clearer for staff and it makes it awful clear for homeowners that what the maintenance requirements are supposed to be. Tall grass, solid waste, and lighting standards, these are all sections in Chapter 96. They will all remain. We have a really good tall grass ordinance we've put in place with another city commission here a number of years back. Talks about the process. We give notice ahead of the the season to a number of apartment buildings, things like that, where we've been out in the past to do enforcement. We notice at 9 inches, and then we're required to mow under the ordinance at 12 inches. That would remain the same. Okay, solid waste ordinance is chapter 51. That section would not change. Our property maintenance code would just reference that it has to be compliance with this section. And then same thing with our lighting standards with lighting pollution. So what is the benefit? I know Doug talked about this a little bit last time, and we talked about it a little bit tonight, the consistency throughout all building types. We know if we have a hole in the roof, we're just going to cite it has a hole in the roof, and the owner is going to need to maintain that. Obviously, we're at minimum standards. We're not picking colors and those types of things. We want to make sure that it's made safe, that we've eliminated water intrusion into the building and those types of things. And so all these are baseline minimum standards. And then finally, we're looking at improving neighborhood aesthetics, property values by setting minimum standards, okay? And then to the right, I'm just going to share that. I'll let Paulie talk a little bit about that. Some of the outreach and so on materials that we've put together. And with all of our standards, regardless, education is key. You know that we do a lot of outreach in the fall when the kids come back. The letters that we talk about with tall weeds and grass, we send out in the early spring. And so we try to stay out ahead of our standards so that folks are aware what those requirements are. And we plan to do the same thing with the property maintenance standards. I know Doug talked a little bit about this last time, but every once in a while we run into a property owner that's maybe unable to financially make those repairs. We also work with those folks, whether it's some of our grant programs or nonprofits, that type of thing, that are willing to do some repair work or some assistance throughout the city. We've done that as well. Just like the other building codes, there's an appeal process. And with the international codes, our appeal process is going to be straightforward throughout all documents, just as we would do our appeal through a Michigan building code or our fire code. We would have that same process outlined in our property maintenance code as well. The board that would hear those appeals would be our Building, Fire, and Sanitation Sewer Board of Appeals. We didn't add another name to this as the property maintenance code folks either, but when we worked with our city attorney on all these changes, they suggested that we just simply reference the existing board. And then, of course, just like any other appeal, if it failed at this level, the applicant, the owners would have that right to pursue it in circuit court. So just to wrap things up, under the benefit summary, we're looking at consistency throughout all property types, residential, industrial, commercial, enhanced public health and safety. We're boosting property values and neighborhood aesthetics. And then we're compatible with all the international and the state codes. And we're going to provide a level of consistency throughout all building types. Okay? So I think that wraps it up. Do you have any questions for me at this time? Sure.
Commissioner Busch?
I have a few questions. So this is just a little project that I've mentioned a few years in a row. A few communities, at least Ann Arbor, who you mentioned have adopted this code, have a policy that they don't enforce the grass enforcement in May. It's commonly known as no mow May. I'm not saying this is something that Mount Pleasant necessarily needs at this point, but it might be something, in the future that we should consider as a, environmentally concerned city. So obviously, if we adopt this policy, there's got to be exceptions at times for specific community needs. And that's doable under what you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You could bring that forward to the city commission. You could probably do a resolution or something, no more May, and we could do that. So.
I have a couple other things if I can go though too. I was so we are in a unique position in our community where, or maybe not so unique, where we have, where we're also located on a tribal Native American reservation. So my understanding is that these policies would not change the way we'd be able to enforce property that is owned by registered tribal members on the tribal reservation. That's correct?
We have an agreement with the tribe.
Right.
Typically, if we get a complaint, we refer that out to Don Seals. They're planning and building folks over at the tribe, and they go ahead and address that under their standards.
So essentially, they would have, so if they chose to, they could adopt these policies as well.
They could.
Okay. All right, and then I got one more thing. we have received yearly complaints about or concerns about shoveling and that sort of thing. So obviously, these sorts of standards for snow shoveling would be spread across different types of property ownership as well, too.
Yeah, part of this document's only going to address that we have a safe condition for the sidewalks on the property. I understand that you're still working through a snow plowing type ordinance, sidewalk clearing ordinance. That would be separate from this.
Separate from this,
Yeah.
okay.
But that doesn't say that if we have a crack and then we have an uneven situation on a sidewalk on a private property, that this document wouldn't
So-
require that to be repaired.
So this document applies to like, well, other than the tall grass, applies to permanent conditions. So like in the sense that like snow will melt. Okay, so that's why it's kind of not included?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things is that this is going to help folks with our rental inspection is that we have some clear language now to work with under our electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. When it talks about unsafe conditions and those types of things, this is actually going to help us out rather than having an individual render a decision and then it may be inconsistent with another inspector. That's going to help folks out, I believe. But yeah, you're exactly right. We may have some other things that are addressed, like in our chapter 96, the noxious weeds and those types of things. But this is primarily maintenance of the building and maintenance of the property, so.
So some of these things that aren't necessarily visible to the public eye may only be discovered if there's a reason why the property is inspected.
Right.
So that could either be at a time where a property changes ownership or like the inspections of rental properties. So, okay.
Yeah. You know, we may get a complaint. It's not every day that you can see a lot of these things, but we'll get a neighbor that'll make a call. We'll go out and investigate it. If there's an issue with, there again, a hole in the roof, we will cite the violation and work with the owner to get that corrected. So, but we have very close to these standards. This, for me, the code guy here, it seems like we're doing a little bit of the housekeeping type thing, consolidating things and cleaning it up and making it more user-friendly, not only for staff, but also for the homeowners and property owners. So, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just I guess kind of to reemphasize one of Liz's points, if there's an issue, if we adopt this and then one specific issue comes forward, we can work to address that. So we can change part of like, well, we, Mount Pleasant, aren't going to work with this part of the property, international property maintenance code, but we still recognize the majority of it. Like we can pick out things that we don't like.
We can do that with any portion of our standards, whether that's part of the fire code, which we've adopted, and maybe we choose just portions of it that we're going to enforce and then portions of it that we want to opt out. We can do that. We can do the same thing here. And that's like anything. We can go for a year, 2 years, evaluate how it's going, and then make adjustments as needed. Similar to what we're doing here, really. So.
Yeah, so ordinances are living documents. They change when they're needed to change, when standards change, or when the environment changes around us. We can make those changes.
So I think we got a pretty clean version. We work very closely with our NRU folks, police and fire, who are in this stuff every day, and with our city attorney. And so I think we're probably getting ready where we can schedule public hearing on and get things moving, so. Okay. Any other questions for me?
Yeah, one thing that I shared with Doug that was important to me is that there was a clear process for enforcement, because there was a lot of talk of like, well, we have the ability to do this, but we're not just going to do that. But the reality is, like, if I sign a lease, it says this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sign that lease if you're saying, well, I'm not going to do this, but we could, right?
Yeah.
So a clear process to say, because if we pass an ordinance that says, if we come across a hole in the roof, we're going to give you a ticket. And then we say, well, we're not going to give you a ticket. Like, we're not just going to do it, but you can. So then let's outline what we're going to do, right? That's important to me, that we have an outline process of saying we're going to, and I don't want it to be intrusive, but I also want it to be able to, because the reality is there's going to come a day where the nice people that have said, we're just not going to do that, aren't in that position anymore.
Right.
right? And somebody could just then take that role and say, well, I don't care, that's what it says, that's what we do, right? So that's important to me.
Yeah, chapter one in every one of your ICC codes spells that out. I can't simply go out and, unless I have imminent danger, and order something to be done. I have to give them due process. I have to write them a notice. I have to give them a time frame to bring that site into compliance. And if they fail to do so, or they don't make any improvements, then that would be the time that we take that enforcement action.
Sure.
That's always the last thing. It's never the first thing.
Okay, well, and part of the conversation was like, now I work for a nonprofit, right? Part of the conversation was like, the way we're gonna fix this is we're gonna get these nonprofits to take care of it. That's just a lot of the conversation that Doug and I had. And I said, that's great. But Habitat for Humanity does one, maybe two houses a year, right? And so we can't count on that. And so that was just one of the concerns that I thought, I want to make sure that's clearly outlined, that when we're telling people, well, we're not just going to do that because we're human beings, but you can, and that's where it could be an issue in the future.
Yeah, no, there's certain groups in the community that we can call if we
Sure.
have smaller projects. Obviously, we're not asking for someone to build a brand new home, but if we need
Sure.
to patch a roof or get a yard mowed, we have some folks that we can call, which is nice.
Yeah,
I do think that's important, realistic enforcement, because at a certain point, it doesn't seem like a credible, policy.
Yeah, I don't see that we're going to have a tremendous uptick in what we're doing. I mean, it's another tool for us, and it's just outlined a little bit better for both sides,
yeah.
staff and property owners.
And we want clarity.
Well, I think clarity is kind. So to say, if it's dangerous, we're going to give you a ticket. Well, what's dangerous mean? I think that's the
Dangerous
thing
is
for
actually
me.
spelled out. I hated
Yeah.
the language that we had to work with.
Yeah.
And it's just, I can interpret it one way.
Absolutely.
and someone else the other, so
Yeah.
this should help us out. Okay? But then again, I think we're in a good spot. We could probably get a schedule for public hearing then at some
Yeah,
point.
if I could just address Commissioner Chapman's question too, just to lay it out. The administrative chapter in the International Property Maintenance Code spells out what that process particularly looks like. It always starts with a letter and notice of citation, just letting the property owner know what is in violation. Typically is included with pictures as well too. So in Building Inspector Brian Kench's example here, hole in a roof, right? You have a hole in your roof and you have a certain amount of time to make that repair. And that repair though, the time is within the discretion of the NRU at that time. But obviously, if we were to take this to court, the city would have to uphold its argument. So we'd have to say, well, we gave them 30 days because we thought 30 days was reasonable for the repair. Or if it's major structural issues where trusses are busted and involved, okay, that's a lot bigger of an issue. It's also important at that point too, that the property owner communicate with the city what their intentions or what their schedule might be. And so that's where some of the variance lies in this as well too. So if we gave someone, let's say 30 days for the hole in the roof and they come by and they say, I got a contractor, but he can't make it out for another 45 days. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable as long as we have that information. We give the 45 days. We check back with the property owner, see if the job's gotten done. And if not, what had happened. Again, it's just about communication with that individual.
Yeah, I think we have great staff. I don't think that's a problem, but there could be a day when we don't. So that's just.
But I just want to note that those conditions are always constant. The letter notice before any sort of a ticket or citation is required, the letter notice, and again, a timeline that we can justify in court. Because if, let's just say, worse were to happen, somewhere you get a letter and you got 2 days to repair the hole in your roof. That's completely unfeasible, and we would lose in court any day. So we would obviously tailor those timelines to be reasonable timelines.
Sure.
All right, any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on this? At this point, I think that Brian is correct, that we could move this to a public hearing. All right. If there are no other questions and no other thoughts, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Leave closed session and then adjourn, yes.
We're not in closed session. We're
We're
in
not
work
in
Oh, we're not in closed session, you're right. Oh, my gosh. Sorry.
All
Ready
those
to
in favor
adjourn.
say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no.
We
We are adjourned at 7:39.
Yeah.